Yeah, I think you're so right to look at the motivation as opposed to just the availability. And I think, like all things, we can't just look to government for a solution. I think that the problem is wholly there's a moral and cultural disintegration within American culture right now. And I would point people to a book called Coming Apart. Coming Apart looked at America really in the early 1960s, the pre-JFK assassination America. And what you notice there is that middle class white Americans had a very different reality than what they do today. Today, where over the past 100 years, people have been living longer thanks to amazing advancements in, technology, science, and healthcare, what have you. But there's one group which, lo and behold, they're dying in an untimely fashion, and that's white middle class men. Specifically, since I think about 1999, we've seen a really, really sharp uptick in this particular population dying in an untimely fashion, mostly because of, as you put it, deaths of despair. Opioids is one of the crises, as well as alcoholism and just suicide, point blank. And when you look at what has changed since then, you're so right in saying, this anti-white bias and ethos on, university campuses and our press, etc. But if you just look at the civic culture that used to exist in let's say, 1963 America to now, despite where you were along the social, political, economic class, there was a unitive culture, a civic culture that brought America together. And where, if you looked at marriage rates, at employment rates, and frankly, church going rates, there were consistencies, and there were populations that were much higher and different than what they are today. And I'll give you an example. For instance, the foundational institution of any society is, of course, marriage, which I believe should be and remain as it is traditionally described, one man and one woman. But if you look at early 1960s America, what you'll see is that middle class white men were married to the tune of 85 to 95% of the population. Today, middle class white men, their marriage rates are 48%. Okay, if you look at the stigmas around work back then, if you were unemployed, frankly, your parents or your wife, if you were in the civilizing institution of marriage, they would tell you that you're a bum, get up off your butt and go and get a job. Whereas now we're like, it's cool, you can sit around, and well, hey, guess what happens then if you have any access to some of these illegal drugs or even legally prescribed drugs? And don't get me started on big pharma here. And also when it comes to the church, I mean, there were rates where at least 50 to 60% of Americans said that they went to church at least, the weekend before polled, whereas today those numbers have fallen like a rock. And so when you see this entire cultural breakdown, it's no wonder that the white male without a wife, without a job, although some of the employment rates have gotten a little bit better under Trump, thank God, and without a very intimate social security net and moral compass provided to them in some sort of a religious, preferably Christian institution, are left wondering, it's man's search for meaning. It's the oldest, question that philosophers since the dawn of time have contemplated. They're sitting there sucked of any sort of meaning, and so, well, they're turning to numbing products. Opioids rather come from opium. Opium comes from the poppy. Poppy is called the joy plant, right? They don't have any joy in their life because we've told them that all the traditional forms of reaching joy and some sort of eudaimonia, so to speak, are wrong. And so this is your solution, white male. Go numb by taking opioids and get sucked up into this new vortex. But props to Trump for at least drawing some attention to it. I think that it's important, too, that we underscore the fact that it's not just white men that are being affected by this, but white females as well, because they're part of the household. And so when these men's lives are basically cut short, that totally disintegrates their entire family unit. I was watching this one clip in preparation for the program today. PBS ran a story, and it was all these white towns that had horror stories. These women who said that their sons had essentially taken sons that were in their early 40s had taken their lives, and then their husbands later felt personally responsible, and so they took their lives in different ways, whether it be alcohol or opioids. And you see total destructions of these communities, which have seen like 300-400% increases in white middle-aged working class men coming through the emergency room. And so these sorts of, it's one thing to talk about it from a national statistics sort of, bird's eye view, but for, a lot of specifically flyover country, this is very much a reality. And I think you're so right, Nick, in saying the fact that this is going to be a factor in the next election when 100, like basically white men of working class are dying. I think it's like around a day in this country. It's something ridiculous. It really is an epidemic. These are real homes, lives, and communities that are being affected. And so thank God for Trump making bringing some light to it, shining some light on it. But I do think it's going to be up to civil society to fix these problems. I think they're going to have to be groups that come out and start talking about it and making meaningful, whether it be men's groups in community centers, whatever it is, but making, that sort of fulfillment that young men get from playing video games, this idea of like fraternity and community, loyalty and honor and being able to do something. Well, we have to be able to mimic that in the real world without, necessarily sending these men to real war. And help them feel a sense of community and purpose in a way that, frankly, government can't fill that void. Civic society has to.
Hey, thanks for watching. As you might imagine, these videos take a ton of work, so if you want to contribute to this channel, please head over to patreon.net/Matthew Drake and become a supporting member. You'll find this and a bunch more links, including the Illustrated Philosophy shop, in the description below. Finally, don't miss our weekly live streams where we talk to experts and fellow content creators right here on Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern. See you next time.